Welcome back, loyal viewers, or viewer, as it were. But thank you for joining me on another one of Nain's shorts here in the den of the wandering Ronin that somehow has a permanent address, but whatever. It's just a title, I guess. Before we start, once again, this is up for raffle. This beautiful blade made by John Atkinson of Wolf's Den Armory. I looked him up. He has a lot of cool stuff. Last week I showed you guys some trainers that I just got, which are awesome. But this blade is just as great, and it's a live blade. It's a recreation of a Klingon blade, whose name I don't know, but I know it's badass. And it's apparently not as sharp as it could be. So still could be sharper, but it's definitely sharp enough. So I would tread carefully for anyone who wins this particular blade. But definitely get those tickets. $5 a ticket, Venmo, Zelle. We'll figure it out. We'll raffle it off next week and see who takes it home. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Because right now my brain is kind of sprinting a million miles a minute. Simply because we just had a lesson, one that we've actually been building up on our students, and I got a bit more of a progression of it, the advanced portion of it, and which really isn't a physical thing. It's always mental. So now I pose this question to those who do practice. I'm sure you have a favorite technique that you like, or one technique that you feel more comfortable performing than others. You know the whole gambit of your system if you've gotten the entire system under your belt. But there's always certain things that kind of pop up more than others that we just really like. And have you ever wondered why those particular techniques work for you? And more importantly, do you know how to get to that technique? Because if you're thinking that a technique is a simulated fight, right? A specific set of movements in a specific situation, oftentimes in a fighting sort of environment.
Guess what? Crack cocaine. I want to see if I can resist it.
He knows I'm not taking sugar, and he puts like one of the best cookies that anyone's ever had right in front of me. I swear, folks, you can't have just one, and I really want to throw the stick at him right now, but I'm gonna resist both the cookies and throwing the damn stick at him, because that is so wrong. That is so messed up. I thought they were all eaten.
Try one.
No. But thank you. I appreciate it. It's very kind of you. It's very Filipino of you. Yeah, just popping it there for me in the middle of a show. Where was I? So if we think of a technique as preset movements in a fight, we have to wonder, how did the person that created that technique come about those particular movements? Did they learn all these different things and then all of a sudden they were like, okay, I'm going to put A, C, F, and D together, and that's going to be technique 27? Or did they find themselves in a situation where that just came out, those particular movements, and they said, oh, hell, this worked. This actually was functional, so I'm going to start teaching it this way. And that's how techniques were born. They figured something out. They were in a couple stuffs or maybe some sort of tournament, or they just fought, and this stuff came out and it worked and it was useful. So they put it together, they trimmed it down, they figured out why it worked, and then they taught that. But those techniques are already, once the fight starts. What we've been discussing lately is, how do you get to that point? What happens prior to reach that position where you can throw those techniques, where those movements would be effective, where those turns or those blocks or those parries, even if you're doing weapons, where you'd be able to utilize that weapon even out of the range that that weapon is meant to be used in. Say a longer weapon, normally you think longer range. But in FMA, you see people like Kakoi doing a lot of really, really close quarter fighting with a stick. Now, that was his style, and he taught it to his students because it worked. And from what I gather with the stories that I've heard about him and the teachings that people have shared that they got from Kakoi, for Kakoi it was inevitable. You were going to get there. And maybe because of his size, he had to fight in closer than others because he didn't have the reach that other people did. So for him, it was easier to be inside. It made more sense to him. So that's the way that he started moving, that he started developing his art and then teaching it. Angel Kabbalas, from what I understand, wasn't a very tall individual. So he too got comfortable with getting in close and really digging stuff in and even using a shorter stick so he could maneuver at that range and be able to hit. Now, I don't know if these are accurate statements, so please, if I'm completely wrong, I'm completely wrong. But this is the train of thought that we've been using to understand how you get from far off to this close quarter, because in IPC we do talk about being close quarter fighters. But if we just start there and start showing techniques at that range and don't teach our students, well, how did you even get there? How were you able to get close enough so those things, those moves, those attacks would become functional? And it's been a progressive teaching for the students, and recently we started using our witiks or abanicos, as some people refer to them. And it's just the wrist turning, right? But the students had to figure out on their own through guidance where they needed to position themselves, how they needed to position themselves for those movements to be effective. And then what sort of effect were they causing? What were they trying to do? Well, we teach them, take out the leg, hit the hand. But why? What do those things cause to your opponent? And that's the thought process that we've been working on. If you hit somebody in the leg, one, pain, obviously that's going to distract them, but it also takes them a minute, maybe just a couple seconds, to realize that something happened that they weren't expecting. So the brain has to slow down just enough to figure it out before they can start doing something else. And by that point, the students are already taking a secondary step in. Now they can use other witiks or other strikes, or even the puño, because now they're in range. And the brain continues to stumble. You take care of one hit, you move in, you hit them 2-3 more times. By the time they're ready to move their hand, you're already in a position to do something about it. Either stuff that, move them, move their hand, move their weapon, and you continue this process, repeating it over and over again. Essentially breaking down the fight into closing the distance while keeping the brain occupied on something other than attacking you. Giving you the free range to do whatever it is that you want. And if you're comfortable being at close range, because we've heard it before from other practitioners, not a lot of people are, especially non-martial arts people. They don't like somebody being this close to them. So that alone causes something in your head that slows it down enough for you to get whatever it is you need done in that space. But we can't just start there. We have to know the progression. So in your techniques, the things that you were taught, how do you get to that point where that technique would work? Have you explored that? Was it explained to you? And if not, what have you come up with to emphasize that process? Because it is a process that has to happen. In any fight, for somebody to hit you, they have to be close enough to do so. So oftentimes, many martial artists will say, if somebody got that close to you already, your tactics suck. Or you're really unaware of your space and your surroundings. So that then becomes a necessity to teach your students to be aware, to not let somebody into your space that you don't know, that may have bad intentions. And that becomes a necessity to teach them for for them to understand when and where to use those techniques. And this is the process that, now that I've said it, many of you have already done. But can we emphasize it more? Can we get it across to the students so clear that it becomes intuitive? And no, I'm not plugging the name of my school. I'm just saying that you do want these things to just come out. Because if everything that they do is preset, but they don't get the right trigger in a real fight, will they do that preset thing? Would they be able to do that preset thing? It seems a bit more daunting of a task to wait for something specific, to do the thing that you know works, versus taking care of whatever happens with whatever comes out. Because now you're not focused on doing anything specifically in terms of moves. You're trying to get an effect. Whether you do that by kicking them in the leg, whether you poke them in the eye, whether you clap, whether you yell, whether you do something stupid like, hey, look behind you. And they fall for it. But all in all, you're trying to distract them from what it is that they're trying to do. Even the avoidance of a fight itself can be considered the same process. You want them distracted from what they intend to do. You make them laugh. You say something. You compliment them. You swallow your pride and apologize profusely for whatever offense the other person thinks you committed upon them. But either way, you're changing the way that they're thinking about, or what they're thinking about, how they're thinking about it. And that's what we've been really kind of delving into, the minutia of what that really is. And when you think about it, it becomes an incredibly simple thing. But as many martial artists know, it takes a lot of training to be able to do something simple. Because there's no getting around it. You still have to learn the moves. You still have to learn the techniques. You still have to learn all the in-betweens that go along with it. So I'm not saying that part isn't important. It isn't highly important. But then what do you do with it? It can't stay in the realm in which it was taught, because that's not how fights usually happen. More often than not, when those that have these elaborate arts that have a long history of changes and growth and added things and different techniques and angles and attacks and kicks and punches and all these different things, when in a tournament, it usually gets boiled down to the simplest things that people do. 1, 2, kick, kick, punch, punch. So what then changes? The mentality. How it is that you're looking at what's actually happening and changing the way that you see it. So it's not so daunting. So it doesn't become like this, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. Because people have 2 arms and 2 legs. And usually what they do is that they become very proficient at hiding what it is that they're doing. So you don't see it coming. And that's high level fighters, right? But somebody who isn't, who's probably a street fighter, well, left, right, they kick because of UFC. They see it and it works. And oftentimes, even in street fights, those low kicks just become distractions so they can get their punches in. It takes the mind away from what people protect the most, which is up here. So what do? You kick them low so they have to look, or their brain has to take a moment to acknowledge that, and then punch, punch, punch. It's an oversimplification. It really is. But it's one worth exploring, at least in my opinion. And that's how we've been nurturing our students, is to understand, look, these movements are great, awesome. You learned them, you got all the details down and everything. Now forget about them. Let's focus on the results. What are you actually trying to do with these moves? What are you trying to accomplish? How is it affecting the guy in front of you, or the girl, sorry, the person, the attacker, the would-be attacker in this simulated fight that we do in classes? Because it is, folks, a simulated fight. We can't go around beating each other with sticks, or if it's an empty-handed class, we can't go around punching the crap out of each other. You know, bones do break eventually. Skin does break. We bleed. We bruise. We get concussed. And if we were to do that on a regular basis, there wouldn't be a lot of students left, or there wouldn't be a lot of mobile students left, because the damage will add up. So what do we have to do then to kind of cross that threshold without actually having to beat each other up? And for us, that came in the way of the mentality, the way that we think about things, and looking at the fight as an overall thing, the entire story. The ending we want, if somebody were to attack us, is that we get to go home safe. The other person is at least psychologically incapable of harming you. If that means that physically they have to be incapable of standing up, so be it. But the result itself is you going home safe. So you have to look at the entire story from beginning, middle, and end. How did it start? Where are you? What's around you? Are there other people? What is it that you need to take care of first, or most importantly? Those thoughts, unfortunately, we don't always have the time in a real life situation to even consider. So class has to be the space in which we do that. Class is a safe environment where we get to explore those ideas, and we get to then test them. Did the students get it? Do you see the change in the way that they're moving, the way that they perform what it is that they're trying to do? Are they goal-oriented, or are they just trying to perform the movements as best they can? Because even in class, even if we know what's being delivered, even if it's a repetitive motion that we do, there's always these little changes. Somebody steps in a little bit further, somebody throws a punch a little bit harder, or maybe they get lazy on this particular turn and they throw the punch differently. There's always these little changes that could happen. Some students miss on purpose because they don't want to hurt their training partner, or they get scared and they pull back. There's so many things that could happen even in training. And those are the things I think we need to focus on most, because those are the changes that are going to happen in real life. And more likely than not, real life attack is going to be nothing like it is in class. But if our mentality is based on the result from the start to the finish, well, then maybe then we can find ourselves in the right place, in the right space, so those techniques that we work so hard on are effective, are being used where they need to be used, or where they are going to do the most damage to your opponent. And that's what we've been thinking about. That's how we've been then teaching the students, from a simple batik: hit the hand, step in, move out of the way, hit the leg, step in, move out of the way, or hit the hand, then hit the head, then hit everything else. And it really is that simple to be said. Now, is it simple to do? I don't know. I want to believe so, because we've seen the results in our students. But then again, that's the progression of that particular story. How do you teach this? How do you set them up from the beginning to the middle to the end, where now they're getting it, doing it, and now we can advance it even further and make it their own? Because ultimately, they're the ones who are going to use it. It has to make sense to them, and they have to be comfortable with being able to think that way and using it when they need to. And so far, it's working. Where we go from here, well, that part of that depends on the student. How much are they retaining? How much are they using it? Do we have to go back and redo that lesson in another way to get them to better understand it? These are all the things then that go into the teaching process of the results that we're trying to see in these students, because we want them to excel. We want them to be able to use this stuff if they have to. But hopefully they've thought about it enough to realize that they should try to avoid it at all costs. But when they can't, they have options. And if we can simplify it, it makes it easier to retain. It makes it easier to come out when you actually need it. So that's my take on it. Again, it's my personal opinion. It's something that many martial arts already do. How emphasized they are, I don't know. I haven't practiced all martial arts to know whether or not that's emphasized in every class, or when is it emphasized. Is it at the beginning? Is it in the middle? Is it at the higher belts? But definitely I think it's something to consider, something to think about, and maybe kind of bring up more of in your particular class, or bring up in you as a student, for you to start thinking, okay, when would I use this? How did I get to the point where I could use it, and what other ways can I get there? Just another way to explore the things you already know, the things you already do. But thank you for joining me on another one of Nain Short. As always, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video with people. The like button helps, but anything you can do, we appreciate your support. So thank you. Oh, before I go, the 30th of September, the OKO gathering is coming up. It's in Pleasanton, folks. It's like, what, 2 weeks away? Right? Not even?
30th.
Yeah, the 30th of September. It's a Saturday. Starts early. Goes on through the afternoon. I'm pretty sure you need to bring a lunch. But reach out to Dennis Duarte or go on the OKO Facebook page. All the information is available. So, haven't made any plans for that date, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So come out and train with us. So, to the next one. 3, 2, 1, cut!